Welcome to the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. We're here to get real about what really matters, not accolades or achievement, not doing more or having it all, but stripping away the extras so that you can be more present, more grounded, more rested, and more you. We're your hosts and co-founders of WellRise, Denise
and Kayla. The Good, Better, Betterness podcast is a monthly chat with and for Black women about what self-care is and how you can make it an intentional part of every single day. We share real stories with real women who are devoted to living a life rooted in better wellness and living in harmony with the world around them. Take a seat, take a breath, and explore how deep and radical self-care can transform your life.
Hey Queens, welcome back to another episode of the Good, Better, Betterness podcast, where we get real about wellness for Black women, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Kayla.
And I'm Denise. How are you guys feeling today?
Listen. Life be lifing. I'm going to let Dr. Glenna, our amazing guest, answer, but...
Is it my turn? Do I?
How are you?
Yes, I am. You know what? I am feeling good. We were talking, offline a second ago, and I was saying I'm getting over something and I'm just grateful to be able to breathe again. You take it for granted when you can breathe normally and then your nose is stuffy. So I'm feeling good.
I love it. And you all, if you haven't seen if you're not watching, then you heard the voice of Dr. Glenna. I'm super excited to get into talking to her, but go ahead, Denise.
All right, that's literally what this thing is all about, right? Embracing betterness and the idea that each new day and with each new opportunity, we could just do a little bit better and feel a little bit better by addressing some of the different this conversation around stigmas. We're hoping that we are kind of equipping everybody with a little bit of information, some additional resources and tips and things of that sort to start to address any issues that they may be feeling or have conversations that they may be needing, and really get away from some of the things that are holding us back from kind of like living our true selves and being our best selves, if you will. There's things like society tells us, there's expectations from the community, mental hurdles, there's lots of different things and barriers that are kind of stopping us on our daily basis from becoming our best selves. In addition to stereotypes like being, strong Black women. So there's just certain things that we can't seem to shake, but we're hoping that today's conversation allows us to get a little bit closer to being able to at least have those conversations and process some of that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly why we have our amazing guest today, Dr. Glenna Anderson. Dr. Glenna is a licensed clinical social worker specializing in the treatment of anxiety-based disorders, including generalized and social anxiety, as well as stress management. So we really gonna get into this conversation.
Yes, welcome, Dr. Glenna, to the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. We're definitely excited to have you here. I think as we talked at the top of the call, it has been a while since we saw your face, have been blessed with your presence. So this is gonna be an exciting chat for all of us here.
Yes, thank you guys so much for having me. I love having these conversations. I feel like that's how we make it normal, right? That's how we normalize mental health. We just talk about it the same way we talk about going to the doctor, the dentist. So yes.
I love it. And introduce yourself. Give us a little bit of background around, how did you even come to this, right? Profession and what, really inspires you to keep going? Because I know it can get hard, right?
Mm-hmm. So when I was a kid, I never really got in trouble. Well, I got in trouble, but I never really got into it with other kids. But I was the person that kids would come to if they needed help with something, if they wanted to talk about something, if they were being picked on, if they felt isolated. I've had people in adulthood on Facebook that were like, remember that one time in the third grade where you helped me with A, B, and C? And I'm like, I don't, but I'm glad that I was helpful. When I was a senior in high school, I found out that it was a whole profession. It was called social work, right? I didn't know that it was a discipline and there was advocacy and advocating for the underserved. And so I got my bachelor's in social work, and then I went on to get my master's and specialized in mental health. I worked in community mental health with adults that were severely and chronically mentally ill. Did that for about 7 years. Then I decided to go into private practice, which it's different. You meet different people in private practice. You get to do things the way that you want to do it. And so one of the things that I started doing was creating a brand. I created the idea of therapy as a lifestyle. It's the idea of addressing your mental health before it becomes mental illness. I've hosted, I don't know how many workshops across the country. I host an annual wellness weekend every year in June, where it's a Saturday wellness workshop and then Sunday brunch. And I get to do really cool things like be on podcasts like this, where I get to talk about mental health very candidly.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is why we're here today, to make sure that we continue the conversation and really have real conversations, which I think sometimes, you'll hear things a little bit more now around therapy and mental health, but what does it all really mean? And how do we truly, truly make sure that we're disrupting kind of the bad systemic and generational things that are being passed down, especially in the Black community? So, I mean, we could just jump right into it with an icebreaker. We'll do an icebreaker just to start the conversation. This is a segment we like to call Put That Ish On. I think I need to come up with a song for that, Sands. Like, put that ish on. We know self-care is deeper than products, of course, and services, and we're going to dive into all of that. But to kick things off, we want to know, what is your go-to self-care service?
I am sorry, I was holding a pen, I dropped it. I am an introvert. Nobody ever believes that. Right. Because people that know me and they see me, they're like, what? Like, I've seen you outside. Like, yes.
I was gonna say road tripping.
Baby, when I'm out, I'm out. When I'm outside, I had somebody, she was like, I saw you at an event. I said, you're going to see me at 3 more for the rest of the summer. When I'm outside, I'm outside. But the reality is I am an introvert. So after I've been outside, I need to go inside for a couple days. And so my go-to self-care is a onesie and books and doom scrolling social media. I like to watch cheesy rom-coms. And I mean, like at the very bottom of the Amazon list where you don't know any of the actors. I like to watch those cheesy rom-coms. But yeah, just all of the comfort things, soft pajamas, soft blankets, fuzzy socks, warm drinks, right? Like I literally like immerse myself physically in things that are soft and gentle, and cheesy rom-coms are gentle and comfortable, and I make no apologies for it. I will have days where I don't open my front door unless it's for Uber Eats.
Come on. Am I an introvert too? I don't even know.
This sounds like winter in Chicago to me. I was like, oh, I do that about 3 months out the year. Outside, I could be outside the rest of the year.
Yeah, no, I love it. And that's one. And here's the other thing. I have ways that I take care of myself individually. I have ways that I take care of myself socially, right? Because there are times where I absolutely need to connect with my friends or connect with my sister, or another form of self-care is getting up and going to church on Sundays. Right. And it's not like I'm like the super saint, it's not that, but being in the presence and socializing with other like-minded people and tapping in, so all of these things are just different ways that I take care of myself.
I love that.
Love that. I recently checked out it's something here in Chicago. It's called Float 60. And you talk about like all of the things that the outside world demands of you, right? Like it's a lot of like tug and pull and just there's really a lot of overstimulation. So this thing called Float 60 is basically where you float and you completely detach from the world. You're floating in a magnesium and salt pod, if you will. It can be dark or it can be light. It really just depends. And you can kind of like, there's enough room to spread out.
Yeah.
But the water just holds you. So you don't even have to think about floating. And it's a foot. I mean, I think they have them that go from a foot to like 6 feet, just depending on how advanced you are. But a very unique yet effective self-care service that I recently tried out that I'll definitely be trying again. That for those people who are like, my world, my house, the outside world is a bit much, you literally can go there and like, it's the first time I probably heard my own heartbeat, right? Just in
Wow.
complete stillness. And it really makes you think of like how small you are in the greater scheme of the world. But I did it like 2 weeks ago. I thought it was really interesting. My husband had got a service from my mom and I for like Mother's Day. But it was just like a complete way, like it's a quick 60 minutes basically, really
like
quick, just basically like cut everything out and completely isolate and really kind of just focused on you.
Yeah, I like that.
I was gonna say that's fancy. Like, also, it's giving like Black Mirror or something. I feel like I've seen that in some kind of sci-fi
I get
movie.
a little too quiet. I'm like, somebody turn off the two chains for me. I can't. Are we? Am I the only one here?
We definitely were like, is there? It's interesting because I actually thought I was going to keep the light on the whole time for that very reason. Like, I'm not sitting here in the dark. And then I found that even the light was distracting. And I was just
Wow.
like, it's just a little button. I did wish, I was like, oh, it would be nice to have a nice little like playlist, like something very, very subtle. But then that's words and, all of that becomes a distraction. So like the whole point is to just cut everything out. So I thought it was really interesting. But it's and what you're doing, summertime Chicago or winter Chicago is what I'll call your self-care practice, because that is all the warm and fuzzy, dimly lit candles, all the things. So
The Dr. Glenna way in Chicago, 3 months out of the year. Okay, I love it. I'm gonna have to try one of those, but let's dive into this conversation because we just talked about this whole strong woman, superwoman archetype, right? This stereotype that a lot of women it's been placed on them, and some women have actually picked up the cape and they hold on to it for dear life. How can this stereotype specifically, and stereotypes more broadly, be detrimental to the mental health of Black women?
You touched on it. Just historically, we've been put in positions historically where we literally had to, going into Black history, like coming out of slavery into the civil rights era, so on and so forth. We've had to enter the workforce. Like there's been things that have happened to Black men that have emasculated them and put them in positions where they couldn't be traditional head of households the way that our counterparts were able to be traditional head of households. And so it put us in the workforce in different ways where we just didn't have a choice. There's a lot of different historical factors that play into that. And also society makes it so that we have to be tough. We have to stand up for ourselves. Like, we are one of the most disenfranchised populations in America, regardless of what type of Black you are, right? Like whether you are, first generation from Jamaica or whether you are African American from the transatlantic slave trade, like once you're here, you're Black. Welcome. And you all get welcome to the room, welcome to the party. And so all of those historical constructs that play into who we are and how we're perceived as Black women in America, we put it on our back. And if no one actively tells us, teaches us, gives us permission to say, no, you get to be soft also. You get to rest also. Then we have this very, very close off idea of what we think womanhood is, what we think a strong woman is. We don't have room or permission to be vulnerable. We don't have time to be vulnerable. Emotional healing takes time and space. And when you got to wake up, take care of kids, go to work, come back, take care of kids, wash the dishes, go to bed, do it all over again. We don't have time to be soft and time to be vulnerable. And so it really takes, again, active conversations, changing the messaging that we give to ourselves and our Black women and our younger Black women, where, yes, I want you to work hard, right? Like soft life don't mean lazy. Soft life don't mean you don't have no work ethic. Like that's not what we're talking about, right? Like I'm not, no. Soft life doesn't mean that as soon as something makes you the slightest bit uncomfortable or inconvenient, that's not for me. It doesn't serve me. Like, no, you just don't have any work ethic. That's what that is. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about work ethic, yes, but not running yourself into the ground. Right? We're talking about having work ethic. We're talking about grinding for your goals, because sometimes there's a season in your life where you do need to grind. You do need to work, 2 jobs, and like that's just what that season is. But also giving yourself time to rest and rejuvenate, and understanding you don't live your entire life running yourself into the ground. Right? There's finals. You're in class and finals come around, and when there's finals, it's tough, and then you take a break, and then you go back into the semester. You don't live your life in that season.
That's so good. That's so good. There were too many gems. I'm like, wait, I want to talk about all of them. First of all, historical piece, amazing, right? Because it's always important to acknowledge, like, where did this come from? No, y'all, we didn't just wake up and this happened. Like, there are things that happen to us that explain why we show up the way we do. And I love that you address this soft life, because some people are like, I don't really like the soft life era. Like, what does that even mean? And I think it's some kind of like, one, it's misunderstood. And yes, somehow some people have decided, okay, this means that we just not going to work and we just want to be pampered and taken care of. Nope, it just means we don't want to kill ourselves by working so hard that we don't even have, the we'll say harmony, because we don't really believe in balance here at BetternessBox, right? The harmony to make sure that we're, like you said, work ethic is not just running yourself into the ground, right? Like actually having a work ethic. So talk about a little bit of how we can start to dismantle those, right? Those stereotypes in our relationships, our friendships, at work, and how can we encourage Black women to prioritize their mental well-being despite all of those societal pressures to overachieve?
First things first, you got to give yourself permission to enjoy life. Like enjoy is spelled ENJOY. And I like to think of it as enjoy, IN. Like I am living in joy, right? Like the joy is a jello mound and I've dived into it and I'm living in joy. So I give myself permission to live with joy surrounding me at all times. Right? Doesn't mean that it'll always be, the dishes are going to need to be washed. Do I enjoy washing dishes? No, but I enjoy a clean, sanitary house. By default, I'm going to wash these dishes. So it doesn't mean that every moment of the day is going to be perfect, but give yourself permission to live in a space, in a world, and have a life where there is joy that surrounds you. First things first, because if you don't believe that you are worthy of it, you're going to sabotage every opportunity. Every time something tries to come and like, here, I'd like to gift you with this. I'd like to gift you with childcare. I'd like to gift you with love. I'd like to gift you with the promotion. You're going to sabotage it because in your heart of hearts, you don't believe it. So first things first, you got to believe that you deserve it for yourself. Got to want it for yourself. And then 2, you have to identify, well, what brings me joy? And for some people, again, like you don't have time, you kind of forgot, once you have kids, you have a partner, your attention gets split in different directions. So you have to remember what brings me joy. Like, oh, I forgot I enjoy putting puzzles together. I forgot I enjoy painting. I forgot that I enjoy gardening. Go back and remember, what do you enjoy? What activity, even if it's a conversation with your friend or putting on makeup or whatever, what activity sparks joy? What makes me feel good, right? Then we make sure that every day or on a regular basis, we're doing some of that activity so that when you do have to clean the toilets and when you do have to wash the dishes, it's like, yeah, but I'm going to do this puzzle later on. So let me do what I got to do so I can do what I want to do. Then you orchestrate that and you engineer that in every area of your life. If you enjoy helping people, you have a job where you help people. So you're still handling your business, you're still doing what you need to do, but at least you're doing something that you enjoy. You enjoy cooking, you get a job where you're cooking. You enjoy helping other people, you become an administrative assistant, right? Like you start to make sure that it is built into your everyday life. So even in the midst of you managing your responsibilities, you're still touching those things on a regular basis.
Oh, that's good. I love that, especially the give yourself permission part, right? Start with believing that you even deserve it, I think is huge and key for Black women, because a lot of our mothers and our aunties and our grandmas didn't believe that they deserved joy because they were just simply trying to survive.
Yes.
So what does it look like now to live in the freedoms that they sacrificed for, to really and truly believe that we deserve joy? Don't be in a prison and, of your own mind, right? That's a tough thing to break out of. But a lot of the things that you said about weaving it into like your actual life and what you do outwardly for work, like what all of those things look like is really helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really stood out to me when you were talking is like the interconnectedness of it all. And you said a couple of things. I've operate from the mindset of do what I have to do so that I can do what I want to do. Like that's something that I've adapted in my life probably the last 20 years. Because it is all so interconnected, right? Like if you do a job that you hate, you can guarantee that some of that animosity that you carry because of the job is going to seep into your home and your family and how you interact with people outside of that and things of that sort. You also mentioned earlier, like creating a lifestyle that starts to address the different conditions and the different situations so that it doesn't progress to the point where it is something that's actually a more of a mental health issue that you have to seek more, maybe more professional services for. I wanted to see if you can talk about like what are some of those negative consequences that you've seen in your patients that kind of really start to manifest when somebody doesn't start to address mental health issues or kind of the impact of unprocessed trauma at that like granular day-to-day of something that's like attainable and achievable, right?
Yeah.
Where does that kind of lead you if you don't start to kind of like break it down in that way?
It looks like a lot of things. It looks like a lot of personalities that we've seen, right? It looks like people that can't receive a compliment. It looks like people that, let me get an archetype in my head. It'll be easier for me to describe it from that perspective. It looks like a person that self-sabotages at every opportunity and they don't even realize they're doing it. It looks like a person that has a hard time receiving love and giving love. So they don't know how to receive easy and free love because sometimes, for example, people that have been emotionally neglected don't know what to do when love freely flows because in their mind, you have to fight for it and you have to earn it. Right. So then you see people that end up in unhealthy relationships because their understanding of love and relationships is that there should be tension and turmoil. So they meet a person that's like, hey, I want to freely love you. And they're like, oh, who sent you? And then they meet a person that plays mind games. It's like, I'm going to love you today, but I'm not going to love you tomorrow. And they're like, oh, that's it. That's the person that I need to attach to. So you see unhealthy relationships play out. You see people that will say that they want to do something, but there's always a reason why they don't do it. They've been about to go back to school for 10 years, right? They've been about to do something and they just won't do it, right? They're self-sabotaging because there's fear of failure and there's also fear of success. Like, of course, fear of failure is what if I can't do it? I'll be embarrassed. I'll look bad. And fear of success is what if I do it and I can't sustain it? I've never seen anybody do this before. I've never seen anybody make this amount of money, maintain this position, achieve this level of education. What if I can't sustain it? What if I get the house and then I lose it? I'll be embarrassed, right? So there's all types of different things. On just a day-to-day basis, you find high-functioning depression and high-functioning anxiety. So that's people where they are experiencing depression, experiencing anxiety, but they're still getting up, going to work. They're still taking care of kids. They're just doing it under duress. So they're still nervous about everything. They're having trouble sleeping. There's physical or somatic symptoms in their body. So there's like excessive muscle tension in their body. There's teeth grinding at night. There's like holding your fist tight, like you don't even realize it. All type of stomach issues because the gut is closely connected to your emotional health. So there's all types of stomach things that happen for people. Sometimes like mineral deficiencies, like magnesium deficiencies or iron deficiencies, just from the stress level in your body is so high on a regular basis that it's causing other things to be dysregulated. The adrenaline and cortisol has flooded your system and now you are experiencing adrenal fatigue. So your body can't even rest. It can't even, like you're going to sleep, but you can't even get rest. It's just like if you turn your computer off at night, if you power it off, it's completely off. Versus if you put it on sleep, all the tabs are still running, right? So when you have a person that is experiencing high functioning anxiety, high functioning depression, or just high levels of stress, they lay down to go to sleep at night, but the tabs are still running. So they're still exerting energy and they're not actually resting. I could go on and on and on about what it looks like because it manifests differently in different people. It manifests in your personality. It manifests in your romantic choices. It manifests in your impulse control, in the types of vices, and how well you manage your vices. Yeah.
That makes that makes complete sense. And as you were running through those things that I think oftentimes we experience, and you were running through things and people's names, myself, right? Like everybody was coming up like, yep, did that, heard of that. She did
It was
that.
like a little ding going
like,
off. In my head.
oh shit. So, but I think because we are surrounded by it almost, we start to normalize it.
Yes.
When it's really like, this is actually not healthy for me, you, the world, like it's not healthy for any of us to be functioning, like you said, functioning in these different mindsets and different kind of like scenarios and way of life. I think mental health oftentimes comes with this with stigmas in the Black community, Black families, and things of that sort, right? And I've been one to say, like, I think mental health is the #1 issue in, I'll say America, but really the world, because it's what leads to, all the things that you so eloquently listed, in addition to the addiction and, overuse of substance, all the different things that we, even crime, like all these different things are literally rooted in somebody's mental condition, in addition to a lot of other economic factors and things that sort. But a lot of that plays into our ability to be mentally, healthy, based off of what environment we live in, what society, our household, all of those different things come into play. But how can we start to normalize the conversation around mental health in our families and communities, so that we start to acknowledge and recognize that while we see these things often, you see somebody who lacks trust and doesn't have the ability to trust themselves or their partners or whatever, we see this often, but how do we get to a point where we can then start to chip away at that and have those conversations that allow us all collectively and individually and then ultimately collectively begin to kind of see and experience a new normal, if you will?
I think collectively, these types of conversations are what does it, right? It's podcasts, it's social media, it's conferences, it's talking about it on television, so that collectively we are changing the narrative. It's no longer hush hush. It's not a secret. It's not taboo. It's not something that you just have to, and don't tell anybody that you had to go see somebody about that. Like, no, let's just talk about it openly, casually, right? We didn't have to have like a big symposium, once a year to address this issue. Like, no, let's just have a conversation about it and let's put it on a platform where it is accessible. So people, whether they're ready to have a conversation or not, they have access to it. They can hear it being talked about. So on a collective level, having these types of conversations absolutely facilitates that process. On an individual level, I tell all my clients, find a safe space, right? Find a safe space. And here's the tough part. It may not always look like the person that you wanted it to look like, right? Like maybe you really wanted your mom to be that person that you could talk to, or your sister, your brother, your cousin, whatever. Maybe you really wanted that person to be that, you had that idea that we were going to open up and have this, this woo 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 moment. And they're not. Mm-hmm. They're not, right? Sometimes we just have to accept maybe they don't have the emotional capacity to give you what you need. On an individual level, it may not always look like the person that you wanted it to look like, right? But this is where we have to be open and flexible. Your coworker that's always like, how are you doing? Be honest. Dude, I am not good. I am tired. I'm struggling. I'm having a hard time, right? Be open and be vulnerable to whoever the safe space is. Sometimes it's your best friend. Sometimes it's not. I have a friend that I have known since the 3rd grade. And we went to elementary school together. I think we went to middle school, and I think we went to different high schools. And then we reconnected on Facebook years and years ago. We have kids that are close in age, and we will text each other randomly and just dump on each other about whatever, right? About being a parent or frustration or whatever. And it could just be a long, like, oh my goodness, I'm so frustrated. I'm just tired. Like, my kids fought me and I made them eat a biscuit and they didn't want a biscuit. And we would just dump on each other. And she might send me a text and I'll be like, okay, give me a second. And then like some hours later, I'll be like, oh my God, friend, I'm so sorry. I hear what you're saying. And we'll completely support. But we might not have a phone conversation for 18 months at a time. But I
Wow.
can send her a text and I can dump on her and she can dump on me and we support each other. And that's the nature of our relationship. We can have a phone conversation. We might meet up, and it's an unlikely person, but this is a person where, I don't know, like somewhere along the way, we just decided that we were going to support each other, and I got her and she got me. So I think on an individual level, find a safe space and be open to it, not necessarily looking like what you thought it was going to look like. And talk and be honest and vulnerable about your experience instead of just holding it in.
Yeah, I
Ooh.
think I saw something recently that was talking about, it was talking about anxiety specifically, but it was saying action essentially helps to dissolve anxiety. And a lot of times we sit, right? Because we don't either know what to do or we don't think that we have the capacity to do whatever needs to be done. And so that essentially kind of like leads to procrastination, and we kind of just don't end up doing anything about whatever the situation is. But just doing something, right? Whether it's that having one conversation, whether it's sending one text, whether it's reading one book, whether it's writing one note to yourself, whatever it is, like these different actions really start to break down some of that and really start to get you in a place. And like I said, maybe it starts with yourself, and then maybe it starts with, as Dr. Glenna was saying, somebody who expressed a certain level of vulnerability to you, right? And as they were on their own journey, and that allowed you to be a little bit more comfortable to kind of then, share what you were experiencing. And that's kind of what sparked, an unexpected relationship out of that situation.
That's it.
That's so good. I love it. You're like, we may not talk on the phone for 18 months. I said, what? But then I thought about it. I was like, actually, I got some of those. Right? Like, I may not even see you, right, for years at a time. But yeah, we in this thing together kind of thing. I love that. Accepting, what comes before you. Because I think a lot of times we have the ability to make and create those connections, but we shy away from it for whatever reason, or don't want to be vulnerable, like you said, and keep holding it in. Now, I want to get into this anxiety disorder, right? Or anxiety-based disorders. And this is what you specialize in, Dr. Glenna. So we're excited to hear, because, well, at least I'll speak for myself. I'm excited to hear, one, because I'm like, do I have some early signs of maybe some disorders around anxiety? But also, I can think of at least 5 people in my life that do definitely, suffer from disorders and have, true anxiety attacks and things like that. And I think, bringing it back to the historical, right? Anxiety is not new, right? We starting to talk about it now. But it's not this new thing, y'all. That Uncle Jojo was having an anxiety attack back in the day when your grandma said X, Y, and Z happened. That's what that was, right? Like we have to acknowledge that these things aren't new. We have been human for a long time. And so now we're just thankfully being able to get into spaces where we can start to talk about it. But are there early signs, right, that could indicate you might be experiencing anxiety? And then, get into the disorder part, because I think those two things are different, right?
Correct. So I'm glad you said that. So again, therapy as a lifestyle is the idea of addressing your mental health before it becomes mental illness, right? So if you don't remember nothing else, the distinction, everybody has mental health. Everybody has mental health. The same way everybody has physical health, everybody has mental health. It's just a matter of the quality of your mental health, right? It might be excellent, it might be, good, it might be poor, right? So everybody has mental health, but mental illness is a very specific collection of symptoms, and you meet criteria for a certain diagnosis. I don't ever recommend that you would even try to diagnose yourself. I don't recommend that people read the DSM. It's unnecessary. if you even think that you are experiencing mental health symptoms, you should contact a licensed clinician, your primary care doctor, or a psychiatrist. Okay. So because I don't want anybody to be like, well, Dr. Glenna said, and she diagnosed me on the podcast. She didn't know such a thing. No
Tell
such a thing.
the truth. Come on. Because
Nobody will do that.
not you talking about, I got a prescription from Dr. Glenna. Where you get it from? The Good, Better, Betterness podcast? No, sir. No, ma'am.
None of that. So when we talk about that, what you are referring to is that everybody has mental health, and as a part of your mental health, you will experience anxiety from time to time. Now, anxiety is normal. It's an emotion that you want. You don't want it to ever go away, right? So you don't want to ever say, I want to get rid of my anxiety. No, you don't. It's a warning system. And so you want your body to always be aware of potential danger. The problem is when we have anxiety that is not well managed. And so we have anxiety that is overactive and it thinks that everything is potentially dangerous. So it signals to your body that we need our cortisol, we need our adrenaline, we need our fight, flight, because something is about to happen. People with high levels of anxiety have trouble distinguishing between perceived danger and actual danger. Perceived danger is my boss called me into the office and I might get fired. Actual danger is there is an actual fire in this room and I need to get out of here. People with high levels of anxiety have trouble distinguishing between the two. So the body responds as though there is an actual fire all the time. Okay, so everybody has anxiety. You don't want it to ever go away. The key is to manage your anxiety. And the key is to start to tell your mind, we are not in actual danger. So it goes into your perception. It's helping your mind and your physical body to understand. Thank you so much, anxiety, for the warning. Thank you. But we are actually not in danger. I'm not being chased by a dog. There is nothing on fire. I have not lost my job. I am not in crisis. But what if it's not happening? Right? And then there's a number of different exercises and things that you can do. So when you are starting to experience high levels of anxiety, you might worry about things. You might ruminate. Problem solving has an end. Problem solving is considering the problem, considering potential solutions, and working it until you reach a solution and then you move on. Ruminating is just going around in circles, usually about the negative effect of something with no real solution. We're not really going anywhere. Right? So if you are ruminating, if you're thinking about something and it's not really making any progress, that's probably anxiety. If you're thinking about something and you have a potential solution, that's problem solving. Right? So when you're getting to the point where you're worried about everything and you can't think straight, it's messing with your appetite, it's messing with your sleep. You might be losing weight because you're not eating the way that you are supposed to be eating. You might be missing social events because you're overly concerned about what people think about you. You're probably experiencing anxiety and it might be leading to a full-blown diagnosis. I won't even get into what constitutes a diagnosis because somebody gonna run with it. But if you even think you need to talk to a licensed professional, a primary care physician, or a psychiatrist.
Love it. Those are great. Thank you for sharing that. And I think the distinction is so key because I'm over here like, well, I might, but I think I'm okay right now. I'm like, no, if there's anything, I'm going to solve the problem. I'm going to create the plan. It's going to have 1, 2, A, B, and C, right? But I know, and I've definitely, it's interesting because no, I don't think I've gotten to the point where I can't manage my anxiety, but I know and can feel when things are really overwhelming, it becomes more difficult to manage my anxiety where, okay, now I am ruminating a little bit more than I probably should, or yes, I'm not eating like I should, or right, like all of those things that you talked about. So it's key, again, self-awareness, being still in your body so you can actually think about what is going on with my body, what is going on with my mind. Super important.
That's it. And what I always tell people, it's like if you think of it on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being like the most stressed, completely anxious, and 0 being like super chill, you're going to need different things at different levels. If I'm at a level 4, what I need to calm me down to a level 2 is completely different than what I need at a level 8. So what you're experiencing is like, yeah, there will be stressful times. There will be times, you know, where you got a deadline or something coming up, and it's not as easy to manage it. But recognizing like this is a warning system. My body thinks that I'm in danger will help you to start with like, we're not in danger. Like this is a problem that can be solved. I can solve it myself. I can ask for help. I can set it down and walk away. Have I given my body physically what it needs in order to think straight? Have we slept? Have we eaten? Have we had water? Have we had rest?
So
That's
that's I feel like I have a question about supporting somebody. Like when you see it in somebody, like say you're going through a scenario together, or you're just you're kind of seeing them go through that spiral. And you just said, you know, rest, sleep, like just taking a step back and really kind of like processing. But I was just wondering if you can kind of share, like, as somebody who may be experiencing like that kind of spiral, that somebody that they may live with or that they may just be, you know, out with, and they kind of see it happening. What are some things that you can even do? Because I think like sometimes saying we're not at danger, you can say that to yourself and you can start to process it, but somebody else telling you we're not in danger when you actually legitimately believe that there is an imminent threat to your, you know, danger here, it doesn't necessarily always go over smoothly, right? So I'm wondering how, you know, you typically like coach people to support, you know, or just help to identify this is something that could be going on, and what's some things that they might be able to say to kind of, at least in that moment, you know, get through those scenarios and situations.
It depends on how severe it is, right? So say somebody is like almost having a panic attack, right? Like, okay, so in that moment, you ever seen like if there's a major car accident, the fire department they give directions, very few words, sit here, drink water, deep breath, right? So when you see somebody when they're in crisis, less words is better. That's not the time to kind of read them a whole novel about you just gotta blah, 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 blah. Stop talking. Less is more. Let's take a walk. Come outside. Give me a hug. Right. So the more heightened they are, the less words and the more directive that you would be. Okay. If they're calm and you're just noticing this pattern over time, then you might find an opportunity to say, hey, friend, husband, partner, I'm noticing that you're getting anxious over time. Can we start to implement some things to help you calm down on a daily basis? Right? Can we do a daily walk together? Right? Like, can we do like some meditation together? Like when they're calmer, now you can have more of a conversation. But if it's intense and in the moment, be directive. And it's sometimes it's touching earth. I love earthing. So touching grass, touching water. Touching water means getting in a bathtub, getting in a pool. It could also just be a shower. It could also be drinking water, right? The human body responds to things like this. Switching gears. So we go outside or we do yoga, you know, we got to switch gears completely and just get some respite from whatever the situation is. Just kind of take your mind off of it just for a little bit. And then your mind can kind of recalibrate. Now we can go back and we can address if there's even an actual problem that's happening.
That's good. And then, okay, so that was obviously for somebody who's potentially experiencing somebody who might be having a potential anxiety attack. For somebody who's acknowledged, okay, there may be something here, right? Because we've all determined that we're not self-diagnosing ourselves. But you can acknowledge when there are some symptoms that are present. So for somebody who's acknowledged that there are some symptoms present, the idea of even going and talking to a therapist, right? Somebody who I don't know, they don't know me, like that can create a whole nother cycle and its own other level of anxiety. So can you talk through either some tips? Either you could take this in two ways, I would say. Either what does like the first session with the therapist look like? What does it entail to make it more approachable? Or what are some tips that like an individual can start to think about that they can get the best out of their first experience in talking to a therapist, somebody who doesn't know them personally, but is there essentially to support them and help them through what they're experiencing?
When you are looking for a therapist, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. It's tempting to read, 2 books and be like, I need somebody that uses this modality and blah, 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 blah. It's tempting. That's not your role. It's their job is to look at you and assess and determine what's going to be the best fit. Now, that's not to say that you can't kind of co-create your experience, but sometimes people, they read a little bit of research and then they overthink it. And then they spend way too much time on the front end trying to find the perfect therapist. There's no such thing as the perfect therapist because they're just people too. Right. So just have an idea. I would say before you even go into it, have an idea of what am I looking for? What do I need? What's happening with me? And then if you can find somebody in the general kind of area, like if you know that you're dealing with grief or if you're dealing with self-esteem, if you can find somebody that works in that area, then you move forward. Okay. So number one, don't overthink it. Don't over research it. Don't have 10,000 spreadsheets and all of that. So that's even before you kind of get in the door. And then once you find, 2 or 3 people, you narrow it down. My process is they would go to my website to give me their information because that's how I can easily track it. And then I would call them back and we have a brief conversation. And I am in that moment assessing whether or not I'm going to be a good fit for you. I worked in community mental health with adults that were severely and chronically mentally ill. And so I know what level I can best serve in private practice. If you're beyond a certain level, I'm going to do you a disservice. So I won't take you. And then I know my therapeutic style. And so sometimes in that conversation, I know whether or not like, oh, you're not going to like me because I'm going to tell you the truth and you're not going to like the truth. That's right. So in that first phone call, I'm kind of assessing, and then you should be assessing. How do you feel? Do you feel safe with this person? That's all it is. Do you feel safe? Do you feel like you can talk to this person? Do they feel warm enough? Do they feel friendly enough? Keep going. It might not necessarily be perfect. Keep going. In the first actual session with your therapist, it needs to be an intake session. If it is not an intake session, you are not dealing with a licensed professional. It needs to be an intake session. They need to gather background history about who you were yesterday and all the days before that, because they cannot just start talking to you. They need to understand kind of who you are, what brings you in, any history of treatment. I ask about medical history, psychological history. I ask school history. Are you stable in your housing? Because you can't talk about how you feel if you don't know where you're going to sleep tonight. So I want to know all of that, right? Are you at risk of losing your housing? Let me know. Is there something coming down the road, right? Is there any abuse happening in your home? So they need to be gathering all of this information. The very first session should be an intake session. If somebody thinks I got this, no, just tell me. It's arrogant and it's unprofessional. A licensed clinician will always do an intake session. If they're not doing it, then they might be something else. But if you want a licensed clinician, that's what they should be doing. Every session after that now is your therapy session. If you want to get something out of it, tell us the truth. Tell us the truth. Tell us that you didn't sleep last night. Tell us that you are still scared of the dark. Tell us about that one thing that happened when you were 7 years old that you never told anybody. Tell us that you secretly hate your marriage. Like if you really want to get something out of it, tell us the truth. Because the more you tell us, I literally tell, like in the very first session, I always say, I know this is our first time meeting. And I know, like, I'm just a person. But the more you tell me, the better I can help you. If you really want to get something out of it, be honest about what's happening. Here's the other reality. Not all therapists are created equal. Not all people will gel. So there might be times where you're working with the therapist, you're not getting what you need, you're not gelling, it's just not a good fit. That does happen. That doesn't mean that you stop going to therapy. It just means that it's okay to switch gears, say, thank you very much for your time, but I think I want to terminate and I want to go find somebody else that maybe I'm a better fit for. And that's perfectly fine.
I just wasn't ready. I have so many thoughts. Dr. Glenna. You have no idea how amazing everything you're saying is going to resonate with so many women. Like I'm actually getting emotional over here because when I think of what we do, we as Black women deal with, but because we are such cornerstones of our communities and our families, to Denise's point, we see and are attached to so many people, especially if you're a Black woman in a relationship with a Black man. Come on, somebody. You see anxiety in a different way than, generic America does not, right? Like we are having special experiences as Black people in this country. And so to speak to them as specifically as you have, I'm just thankful. I'm so thankful. I think one important thing, because, you know, therapy's cute now, right? Like therapy's like, oh, I'm gonna get a therapist. I had my little therapy session. It's kind of like, calm down. Are you actually getting something out of it, right? And these are questions only, you wasting your own time if you go in there and you are super surface. I've known some folks to go to certain therapists, and good therapists will say, hey, I don't think that I'm able to help you, right? Like I don't want to waste my time either, right? Like, so if you're not going to do the work, you're not going to be truthful, you're not going to be vulnerable, et cetera. Now, I do think there's a process to that, because you see what you get. I'm going to tell you everything. As soon as I got my therapist, I was like, so here's what happened when I was 10, right? I was ready to go, but not everybody is like that. And so I do know and have friends that have opened up, over time, and friends will come to me and ask, like, did you tell them everything? I was like, listen, outside of Jesus, my therapist knows everything about me. My mama don't even know some of the things I told my therapist, right? Because that may not be the safest space for that information. So this is my safe space. This is what I'm paying for. This is what my benefits are paying for. Use that time. Don't waste your time if you're not going to tell the truth. So yes, love that you harped on that, because what a waste of time if you're going to do this.
Exactly.
Right? And not get the help that you need. Yeah. So, I just feel amazing about everything that just went on. Sam, do you have any other questions?
No, I think it's interesting because, like, tying back to earlier in the conversation of, like, we've normalized a lot of the stuff, right? You could be 42 and still be afraid of the dark, and nobody said anything to you because you just think that, like, hey, I just never grew out of it. But because of the fact that, like, in our homes and things of that sort, a lot of stuff is just normalized, not because we just don't process it and we just, like, see it often, right? So call that normalized, if you will. But because of that, it seems like it almost has people be like, well, does this even matter, right? Like, I think a lot of times what you were saying earlier too about, like, believe that you're actually worth experiencing joy, worth healing and things of that sort. If you don't believe that, then you're not going to think that, these different conditions matter, and you're not going to be vocal about that because you've processed it, you've tucked it away somewhere in the back of your memory. And you probably don't, to bring it up is doing the work of, like, starting to then experience it and process through it. But yeah, it's interesting how, like I said, the interconnectedness of all of this, how you relate to other people, how we've normalized things, how we see it, so we don't necessarily think that, like, well, I'm different. Like, why should I be able to talk about this when three of my 7 friends in my friend group are all, experiencing the same thing. But I think, what you were saying earlier about having people really start to acknowledge and understand, like, just because you've always dealt with something does not mean that you need to take it into tomorrow, right? Today is always a new opportunity to decide, like, okay, I just want something different for my tomorrows, So that's kind of where my mind was going with that right now.
One of my favorite mantras is, what has been has nothing to do with what will be.
Absolutely.
Run that back for me, please.
What has been has nothing to do with what will be. Meaning, I don't care if all my yesterdays I was this way, tomorrow I'm gonna be whatever I say I'm gonna be. And my whole world could be different. I don't care how many times I've experienced, loss or grief or disappointment. I don't care. I don't care. What has been has nothing to do with what will be.
And the one thing I'll add to that, just because I feel this way truly, today is, like, really the day to start, right? Because if you think about it, tomorrow never actually comes. You're never standing physically in tomorrow. Yeah. And so a lot of times people are like, oh, tomorrow I'll call it Monday, June 5th, whatever. You can add a date to things. But those tomorrow people, one day people, you never actually are present in tomorrow or one day. So determining, how you make that decision for yourself on if it's, a date, a time, or whatever. It really does start with just that initial conversation with yourself, in the present moment.
Oh, that's good. That's so good. Cause yeah, we be talking about, oh, next year. Oh, next year's here, girl. What happened? Okay. So uh as Black women, right? Many Black women, we may not be able to afford traditional therapy, right? Like I talked about benefits a little earlier. Like not everybody got them free sessions with their EAP program, their employee assistant program. So are there resources and support groups or anything that you recommend for like any woman who's like, sure, everything you said sounds amazing, but how do I get access to that?
So with Obamacare, there's a carve out. So now, because it wasn't always like that, right? Back in the days, mental health was not necessarily included. So now mental health is included in your insurance. So the same way that every year you can call and get a physical, the same way you can get your teeth cleaned, you have coverage. So you would need to call your insurance provider, ask them for a list of clinicians, and you'd have to go through and find a clinician that has openings and get yourself scheduled and use your insurance benefits. That's one. There are agencies kind of depending on where you are that operate on a sliding scale. And so, you can present your income and you can say, this is how much I can afford, and you can pay on a sliding scale. So there's those two things. You can also not therapy yourself, but learn on your own. There are some key books like The Body Keeps Score is a really good one that really helps people to understand what happens when you experience trauma, what happens to your physical body. There's another one called Uninvited by Lisa Turkhurst. It's Teurk. Yeah.
Yes, it's LYSA though, right?
There we go.
Yep.
Yeah. LYS, Lisa Turkhurst. So that's another one that really helps people to deal with when you feel rejected and alienated in all types of different circumstances. So there's a lot. I mean, like I'm a bibliophile. I love books. Like I love books just for the sake of loving books. So like I get excited going to Barnes and Nobles. So but there's lots of books where you can read and learn about what's happening in your body. Nedra Tawwab, Tawab, has a book called Boundaries. And that book is thorough. It's almost like a textbook. It's really, really thorough to just help people understand what boundaries are and the different formats that they come in. So if you don't have insurance benefits, or if you don't want to use those, and if you can't find a clinic on a sliding scale, read, listen to podcasts, right? Like there's a lot of information out there now where you can learn kind of about yourself and you can grow independently.
Yep. I think that's really, really fair because some people some people I could see that are already hesitant, right? We have all of these barriers. They're going to use that as to say, I don't have to really work on myself because I can't afford therapy. So, oh, well, right. Instead of taking the responsibility to say, oh, actually, there are some really great resources, right? Like you said, podcasts. Our podcast is heavily based on mental health and the mental health of Black women specifically. So I think, and there are many others and many other books and many other things and resources to definitely use. I know, I don't know if you're a fan, but I am a fan of Megan Thee Stallion. And she came out, like Dr. Glenna said, Magnies, come on. Body, yada, yada, yada. So she came out with a website, and I'm trying to remember what the name of the website was, but it literally lists all of these mental health resources that are either free, mental health, what is her name? Megan Thee Stallion. I gotta find it now because I feel like people really gonna want to know. Oh, okay. So it's a bad word. So just bleep this out, Patricia, okay? Because it's Megan. It is what it is. Bad bitches have bad days too.com. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And the whole website she created talks about the resources, talks about all of these different options, therapy for Black girls. It has a lot of those resources we were talking about, those podcasts we were talking about, books. And then, like I said, access to hotlines, right? If you're dealing with something even more serious, like suicide or trans lifeline, a crisis lifeline, right? She's got everything on here. It's amazing. She came out with it a couple of years ago. And it just showed that one, she's a young Black woman who's not only on her own journey of healing through therapy, but she felt so passionate about her own journey that she wanted to create a resource for everybody else. So another great resource. Shout out, shout out to Megan. Awesome. Okay, that was our last question. And well, if there's any other advice you would have, I guess we can answer that. Any other advice you would have for a Black woman who's nervous about opening up to a therapist, right? We talked about that superficial, like, I don't really want to talk about or be vulnerable. Any advice you'd give to a woman who's just nervous about opening up about their struggles? And, you know, we have a lot of loyalty, right, in our mind about, well, I can't say that because my grandmama, right? It's like your grandma not even in the room. Like she passed a couple years ago, girl, and your mama don't care either. Like I just feel like we have sometimes, I used to tell this story all the time. Sorry. I feel like I'm full of stories today. But every Sunday at church, I go to like a church that's kind of casual, right? Like, you know, you can kind of come as you are. Every time I'd want to be like, let me put these jeans on, I want to be comfortable, I just felt it. I felt right here. My mama was like, right on my neck, like, you really gonna wear that to church? Oh, okay. And so I would be dressing up. This is years, y'all, of my life that I would dress up, and I'd be one of the only like super dressed up people. Could have given me a church hat. Like, what am I doing? And eventually I got away from that. But you know what I mean? We just, as Black girls, we have this kind of loyalty and honoring that is beautiful in some cases, but sometimes it can really cripple us. So yes, please speak to any advice you'd give.
To the Black woman that is nervous about utilizing mental health services, talking to a therapist, to her, I would say your feelings are valid. Your experiences are valid. You are not too much. You are not extra. You are not needy. You are not taking up too much space. Yeah, like to just go in and talk and get some of this out of you and off of your chest. You are worthy of support. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of rest. And this is a space that is designed to give it to you.
This is the space that was designed to give it to you. Because, you know, we like a design, not a custom design that was built so that I could get the help that I need and the healing I need. Yes, Lord. Thank you. Oh my gosh, that was amazing. We're going to do a rapid fire and wrap this thing up. I am so, so, so excited about the folks that are going to hear this. But yes, let's get into the rapid fire. First question, you ready?
Yes.
Favorite self-care tip?
Go lay down.
Perfect.
Oh, good.
She said, look, sometimes you just need to be direct. That was very direct. I took
Go lay down.
down as soon as we're done. No. Meditation or journaling?
Journal.
Your power word or your mantra?
Living well is the best revenge.
Ooh.
Nice.
Ooh.
What is a myth about therapy that you'd like to debunk?
Ooh. There's so many.
First thing that comes to your mind.
That we can't handle you.
Ooh.
I'm sorry.
People really be like, no, you don't understand. Be like, try me. Try me. I haven't heard it all, but I done heard so much. Try me.
My therapist be saying the same thing in a different way. She's like, envy no one. I hear it all day. Envy no one, right? It's like the flip of that. It's like, you have no idea what other people are going. You think you're envy no one. Okay, lastly, your words of encouragement for listeners struggling with mental health. And I know you just kind of gave some encouraging words, but just little sentence here for them.
Words of encouragement for somebody struggling with mental health. I know it feels like you're going to break in half, but you won't. I know it feels like it. You won't. So just keep living.
I love that.
I love it too. My. This is one of my
Dr.
favorite
Glenna,
episodes
thank
ever.
you. We'll go ahead and say thank you because the listeners will find you and follow you. But for now, we're gonna go ahead and say thank you from Denise, from Kayla, and from our community collectively. It's been a fantastic conversation and interview, packed with a lot of valuable information. Like Denise and Kayla, we listen to these, we interview you, and then we go listen to it as a listener, and then we play some of these information back and take notes, right? So just a lot of really valuable information that you shared today. Thank you for being vulnerable in today's conversation, which, like we talked about earlier, allows for other people to start to experience what vulnerability looks like and feels like for them. So thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your expertise with us and with our listeners. Before we let you go, where can the listeners find out more about you, get in touch with you? If they're in California, potentially become a client of yours, can you just share where we can reach out to you at?
So you can always go to drglenna.com, drglenna.com, Dr. Glenna LCSW on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. It's like I'm on Twitter, but I'm not on Twitter. So really, Facebook, Instagram, and the website are the best way to reach me.
Awesome. Y'all better check Dr. Glenna out. Okay, you heard the way this was a whole therapy session within itself. And can you imagine the one-on-one attention that she would design this experience for you? I'm going to design a lot more when it comes to therapy. I think that's fire. But we do hope genuinely that this conversation has empowered our listeners to prioritize their mental health and feel comfortable seeking help when they need it, right? And I'm a proponent of every Monday at 3 p.m. That's when I see my therapist. But there might be seasons where I don't really have the immediate need, right, to talk to my therapist. I don't foresee them, but listen, she's my accountability partner at this point. So definitely seek the help that you need, and listen to this, share this episode, and send it to someone who really needs to hear this episode and what Dr. Glenna had to say.
Yeah, I think until next time, make sure that you're taking care of yourselves. Understand that you're not alone, right? We've given lots of resources in the chat today. But if you feel like you're potentially struggling with something, reach out to a trusted friend, reach out to a family member, reach out to a therapist, a professional. There's mental health hotlines. We will be dropping a couple of resources in the show notes. Kayla also gave a website that has lots of other resources. And then if you want, make sure that you follow Dr. Glenna on her website, Instagram, and Facebook, as she shared a little bit ago.
All right, y'all. Take care of yourselves and always keep it good, better, and always betterness. Bye. Thank you, Dr. Glenna.
Hey sis, we thank you for honoring yourself by taking the time to listen to the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. Thank you for joining us on the journey to betterness.